Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Instagram live feed. So today I have the absolute pleasure of interviewing the sculptor Michael Speller, who is just joining us now. So we're just waiting for him to join me on this live feed today, where we're going to be chatting about some of the work that he has been doing over lockdown and what he has been working on. So in just a few minutes, while we wait, you can admire this absolutely beautiful Michael Speller sculpture that we have behind us. So Michael is just joining us now. We won't have any technical issues and we'll see him very shortly. So the piece behind me that you can see is one of 3 or 4 that we have in the gallery.
Hi, Lucy.
Hello, Mr. Speller.
Welcome to South East London, Bermondsey at my studio. Nice to see you.
Well, welcome to Mayfair Clarendon Fine Art, and thank you so much for joining us today. How are you?
No, I'm good. I'm looking forward to having a chat.
Good. And how have you been in lockdown? We've been missing seeing you in the gallery over the last few months.
Yeah, well, I think it's been strange for all of us, hasn't it? Really. I mean, my lockdown's been very similar to normal. I'm locked down in my studio on my own, that's sort of self-isolating, and that element of it has been very similar to normal.
So nothing's changed for you.
Yeah. No, my foundry's been brilliant as well. They've done a sort of shift system coming in very early morning and very late at night to self-isolate, but keep going and keep producing work for me. So that's been really good. And so I think it's for everyone, it's had a major effect, including myself, but it's more of a reflective sort of thing on where we are individually in our lives and the values within our families and everything else around us in our community. So I think it's a pause button and for everyone really.
So you've been very productive, and this has been feeding into your work, do you think?
Yeah, well, I'm
a positive influence.
Exactly. Well, I'm a bit of a hectic person anyway, so I'm always chasing around doing lots of things, and this time has been no different in many respects. I thankfully had Sorry, I didn't catch that.
I said you've become calmer in this
period. Well, we do, but try. I mean, it just it's
always improving, Michael.
Exactly. I'm working my best at it, I promise you. But it always has a certain element of failure on that. I just high energy sort of person. But I mean, I've had a big project just before lockdown for the States, and thankfully, because the foundries kept going, and I can work within my studio, that has kept going as well. So that's really great. So it's an exciting project and enjoyable to be able to continue with it.
Amazing. Why don't you tell our viewers a little bit about this very exciting project?
Well, it's called Encompass. The original was a piece I did for Greenwich Hospital in Greenwich, and this is my version 2, if you like, which is for the States, for a family in the States, and it's a story about connections. And in this case, it's going to be a story about the connections of the family and the interests of the family and how they're connected together. So you can see the image there. That's of the large piece there. And as you can see, it's a whole sphere. So you're looking right the way through the sphere, and it's 210 figures connecting. And it's just about how we join and connect together. And the lovely thing is the light throws through it and builds lovely shadows surrounding it as the day progresses.
Yeah, so as we can see, so this is the commission that you did in Greenwich. So it's going to be the same size and scale as this piece, isn't it?
Yeah.
But this is a separate commission going to the US for a private client.
Yeah.
How exciting. And I think you've got some bits and pieces in the studio to show us.
I can.
Of this project.
I can. I'm going to just turn the screen round, and there's 27 of these sections. So they're quite large. They're about 5 feet tall. And each one I'm working on separately. There's another one over there. In fact, there's a base over here. And each one of these sections need to be worked on individually in the wax. And then they'll come together into the bronze. You can see one down here. I've got one that I prepared earlier, a bit of a Blue Peter moment. So this one actually is now in bronze. So it's just been poured, almost still warm. And that's now come through and ready to put together, which will be quite complex. I've also got here, to get the feeling of the complexity, this is Encompass, the small version, which is a 50 centimeter sphere. And you can see here just the beauty of this is the inside of it, but you can also get the outside. I go slowly. In fact, maybe see it there will be better. And this is before it's welded together. It's before the patina, but it's just, this is like bronze lace, the small version. It's quite
really is.
incredible.
So these are the individual sections that you create in pieces, and then you have to build it all together as one larger sculpture.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, so it takes a bit of planning.
A little bit. And how many individual pieces does it take to build something of that size? How many?
27 sections in the large sphere. So encompass the large version. So
Wow.
and to get that completely spherical is quite complex. It sounds straightforward, but we need to make another sphere within the sphere to ensure that we get. Sorry, I'm going to put that back on there. To ensure that we get it absolutely spot on, because you're seeing
I
all
can
the
promise
lines.
you it doesn't sound simple at all to most of you. I mean, it's obviously a very complex process. So you've got your wax pieces there, which you're then turning into bronze. For our viewers, why didn't you explain just sort of stage by stage how you do create your sculptures from the sort of idea, the conception? How do they turn into these beautiful bronze creations?
I can do that to gain another movement of the screen, but basically, I make an original of a piece. Let's pretend this piece here. Let's go back a bit. That figure is in clay. Once I've made a figure, I then put it in a rubber mold. I make a rubber mold, and that's a silicon rubber mold that you see there. And that's in fact the wax that's coming out the other side of that. So you essentially start with clay, then make a silica rubber mold. From that silica rubber mold, you pour a wax, and from that wax, you then put it in a ceramic shell. That's a sort of ceramic shell behind you, so it's covered. You then heat it up, and that means the wax melts, and you're left a cavity where you can pour your bronze into, and then it eventually, therefore, you've got the bronze figure that you can then patinate and.
But that's the final product.
Yeah, so we've gone through. So your image at the top, obviously, in a home position there.
Yeah,
so it gives you an idea. But it's quite a complex process with lots of skills from the foundry were required, really.
Certainly is. It certainly is. It looks like absolutely incredible. So you work both so you've got a studio in South London as well. So you create this actually in your foundry, where you have a sort of team of helpers. Help with you.
That's right. No, I mean, basically, I start. I'm sorry, I'm just going around my studio as I'm talking because I thought might see some things as I go. But you're basically producing the original in my studio, and then it's a real skill set at the foundry to then make it into bronze. But I spend a lot of time in the foundry. I'm there probably most days of the week, checking on the waxes, checking on when the pour happens. The chasing to get it back into the original state that I'm after.
Wow, it's incredible to see your studio and all the little things you're working away on at the moment.
Well, I'm always a little bit busy. There's always more than one thing that I'm working on, and I'm a bit of a butterfly. I just go from one thing to another. But it's
so this beautiful piece behind us, the large head potential, that leads me on quite nicely to my next point.
Oh, okay.
So, obviously, within your work, words and letters, you include them in your pieces quite often. This is a perfect example of how you often do this, quite an extreme example. Often you press them into the sculpture. But with this one, you've created the actual sculpture from letters itself. Maybe you can tell our viewers a little bit about that theme in your work.
It was sort of an obvious progression, as you say. On most of my work, there's text, which is basically being put on because you're missing out on the exciting bit of the creation. All the things I'm thinking of as I'm trying to produce a piece of work, I'm writing down and then impressing those words actually on the clay, and therefore it goes onto the bronze. In this case, it's called potential. And I'm slightly dyslexic, and you've got all the letters here. You've just got to make sense of them. And so this is what I'm attempting to do on this. But it's like a three-dimensional crossword because there's lots of cunning words in there that I put as I was installing all the letters, many words of all the other pieces that I produced up to the point of making this one. So it's kind of fun to look in there and see what you can see in it. But it's letters and it's text, but it's also texture. And I think that is what I love about it. There's a story, but there's also just a depth in actually the texture on the piece.
Oh, it's a beautiful piece. It really is. It's one of my favourites. So most of these works you create sort of as commissions for private clients, sometimes sort of site-specific installations, but you also almost every year have the pleasure of being involved. So here's an example behind me in the very prestigious Chelsea Flower Show. Am I right?
Well, I've had the privilege of doing that for I think 14 years now, and wow. I started by being just presenting my own work within Chelsea. I had a stand there, and over the years I've obviously got to know a lot of the garden designers, and they've got a little bit of faith in me, and therefore I've been been many of the mainline gardens throughout the last, I don't know, 10 years or whatever. The image in front of you there is Kate Gould's garden, I think in 2017. And the wonderful thing about being in one of those gardens, it's presented beautifully. This one in particular, you can look at it from this angle, but you come right round the side of the garden and you've got it bang on. So you've got a overall presentation of the work and the story of the whole garden she's designed, and then you can see it more intimately from other angles. And I mean, it's just lovely to be a part of that and to show off my work in such a beautiful setting.
It is. It looks like it's made for that spot, doesn't it? It's absolutely stunning being able to see it just through that sort of channel. So that was a couple of years ago, and I think, is this your most recent Chelsea Flower
Well,
Show?
as recent as we can get, because obviously it didn't happen this year. So that's last year, and that's Tom Hoblin's garden, which the title of the piece is Flow, and the whole design of the garden was about flow. So we gelled very nicely together on that project. I mean, there was a water source just behind the sculpture, and it flowed downhill to a larger sort of pond at the base of the design. And obviously my figures are also flowing downhill. So it worked really nice. And it's just great when you're working with people of that sort of understanding, and you get hopefully, every time I've done it, a really great result for all of us. I'm enhancing the garden, but the garden's enhancing me.
It certainly is. So do you have a favourite project that you've worked on, over your time? I mean, personally, this for me is one of the strongest pieces. I think because of the context it's in, it's just absolutely stunning. But I mean, is there a work that really stands out for you? You've loved working on?
It's always the next, But you show that image, and I'm very proud of that. That's Harmony, and it's in Ireland. And I'm in the process of doing another one in addition, which is going to be on Lake Geneva. In fact, in normal circumstance, it would already be there. but it's waiting in London for the appropriate moment to go out there.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to, again, look stunning like that. I mean, my circular pieces love sky, love water, and it just floats in that scenario, which it always seems to work really nicely and feel very natural in the environment. I mean, the figures on that look like it's just two figures in a circle, but actually the detail there is much more subtle, and it's not as obvious as it looks. They've got two legs, for example, rather than four. It's that sort of thing. You're playing with things rather than doing it as an obvious imagery, an exact image of two figures. Yeah.
A lot of your work is about balance, isn't it? That's definitely a theme I can see, both sort of physical balance within the work itself, but also sort of metaphorical, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, absolutely. Balance is what it's all about. And none of us are perfect, and we're trying to make the best of what we've got. And if you look at my figures, if you actually got a measure on something or got a line, actually they're not totally balanced. There's something slightly off. But what I'm working on with that is it looks balanced. It looks absolutely right. And
Mhm.
that the subtlety of that difference is what I'm playing on. And we're just making the best of what we've got particularly in, again, at the story of the moment. You know, making the best of what we've got is an important thing. And I think that is something, you know, the reflective part of lockdown for many people.
Amazing. It's lovely to see you bring something, you know, something positive out of this quite difficult time, actually, Michael. That's lovely. Well, before we wrap up, is there anything else in your studio that you'd like to give us a sneak peek of or show
Well,
us?
I think that we should, because Union is a piece I had presented before, but this is a new edition on a bronze base, which I think is going to work. Well, it has worked really well. It's hot off the press, bronze nearly still warm, and we just literally completed it this week. But I will just take my phone again and just give you a sneak preview. You have probably seen it before in the studio. I'll try and stand back as best I can so you can see it in the whole. But it's that piece there, there's a lot of subtlety that you can't see as well in this light, but it traveling up it's just a very strong piece. Again, likes a lot of light and sky. And you may have an image of that on your screen, I think, or maybe of it in situ, but maybe not. And then again, you've got the words in there, which
I do have. Ooh, I've got a close up of bits of it, but the images don't quite fit on my
no,
screen.
don't worry, we've got this one, we're fine. And again, you can see the text on here somewhere if we go in. Again, it's subtle, you can see the textures on it, which I love to see that.
Yeah, you can see the words pressed into it.
Oh, you can, good.
This piece, this usually has a sort of like fragmented stone base, doesn't it? But you've decided to do it in bronze. Is there a sort of thought process behind that, or are you just being experimental?
I'm always playing.
Yeah.
And I think this offers, it's just got a difference. It's got a stability to this that it's stronger. And I think, you know, it'll work in different scenarios for what both I love, but it's just playing with different ways of approaching the same styled piece.
Stunning. Yeah, it's got a slightly less sort of organic feel about it, like you might find it growing out of a rock face, hasn't it? It's a little bit
exactly. I think that's right. I think that's right. Yeah.
I mean, it's wonderful to be able to have a sort of sneak peek into your studio, Michael. I imagine it's been not that easy sort of moving things about in this 30-degree heat that we're having, obviously, because so much of it is wax.
Well, it was hilarious. The two I was bringing the two panels over literally beginning of this week, and as I got them into my van, it was midday sun, 30 whatever degrees, and I at each traffic light where I was being stopped, I think, no, please keep going, because I could see wax, the image of wax pouring out the back of my van and having nothing at the end. But we got there.
You did. Limited time available to move, but you did an amazing job. So, I mean, from me, all the guys at Clarendon, and for all of our viewers who are watching, I just want to say thank you for sorting this out during, you know, sort of semi-lockdown. It's not the easiest thing. And it's been a real pleasure to talk to you today. So if anybody would like to learn more about Michael's work, we've got a new catalogue that we've just brought out, which shows all of the incredible works in his current collection. And if you'd like to speak to anybody about his work, you can get in touch with any of us at your local Clarendon galleries, or you can email into our info@clarendonfineart.com website, and a lovely consultant will have a lovely chat with you about some of his work. And hopefully we'll be, you know, having an exhibition of your work in the next year or so when we're out of lockdown, Michael. So yeah, a big thank you for all of us, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
Thanks, Lucy. It's been lovely talking to you. See ya.
We'll speak soon.
See ya.